Hey guys, this is Bandito Bane, the well-rounded nerd, the Super Spider-Man fan, and the Warhammer noob. And today I have a treat for you. Not only am I doing a review for a Spider-Man series, I am doing a review for a Spider-Man series and a Spider-Man anthology. First, we have Spider-Man, Spider Shadow by Chip Zdarsky and art by Pasqual Ferry. And this is a dark take on the symbiote suit saga. It's a what if Spider-Man did not decide to take off the suit, if he decided to keep it on. And it leads to a very, very dark turn. He essentially becomes this version of Venom. And a lot of unfortunate things happen with his choices. And this is and the story that deeply goes into addiction, into into twisted love, into many other aspects of what revenge, what people think is right, and what people deem wrong it is, and also it also goes into the darker aspects of humanity and what we do to separate ourselves with it. And but the Spider-Man anthology is Spider-Man Fairy Tales. This is by C.B. Cebulski, and it has 4 stories with art by Ricardo Tessiro, Nico Hederchen, probably butchered that, Kai Kobayashi, Christina Strain, and also having a story co-written by Mindy Owens and art by Nick Dar- Dargada, I think. But I probably butchered that one. And these are stories similar from around the world. We have a story. The first one is basically a story or a retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. Second one is of Anansi, the African spider god, and the third one is a Japanese myth involving yokai, and the fourth one is a retelling of Cinderella, with Peter as the unfortunate role of Cinderella. But enough about me to babbling. First, let's get into the Spider Shadow. And first, I am going to go through the art. Through, well, first I'm going strike that, reverse it. I'm going to go through the story, through the art, and then I'll after at the end of this video I'll give it my final verdict. And for Spider-Man Fairy Tales, I will go through each of the stories. I'll go through the stories, I'll go through their art, and then I will give my final verdict at the end of the video. And we will basically see how it all measures out. How many thwaps these books can get, and if they're worth your time or if you should just pass them up. So let's get it on. That sounded wrong, but let's get into these stories. Spider-Man Spider Shadow begins with Peter having a dream that he is unable to save the people he loves. And this begins to affect him because he is having constant nightmares. And this takes place when he is in a love triangle with Black Cat, Felicia Hardy, and Mary Jane. Mary Jane just figured out he was Spider-Man and officially broke up with him, but secretly he still cares for her, and he basically Felicia got him on the rebound. And this basically has a lot a lot of a lot of traction because when the original part of this story came out in Amazing Spider-Man back in the late 80s, there was a lot of people saying people he should be with Black Cat. Oh, he should be with Mary Jane. But I'm glad this story doesn't focus on this one too much. But Spider-Man is still wearing the symbiote suit as he had gotten it from Secret Wars, and so he tries going to Mr. Fantastic's lab in the Baxter Building, but he is stopped by the suit because it refuses to shoot webs, and he thinks it's just a glitch in the suit. But he ends up going to stop a crime committed by the Goblin or the Hobgoblin, and even though he even though he beats him, he almost kills him. Instead, he takes off the Hobgoblin's mask, learns he is Roger Kingsley, and he basically uses it as an advantage to threaten him, to spread word among the criminal underworld, to tell him that Spider-Man no longer plays nice. So Peter tries to go to Aunt May, and he gets some sagely advice that, well, no, that didn't happen just yet. The next day, he goes to Mr. Fantastic, and he learns that the suit is alive, and it is, while it is enhancing his strength, it is also feeding off him kind of like a symbiosis. And while Peter learn in the original, Peter has Mr. Fantastic take the suit off him, and this was what brings the 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 symbiosis to the original Venom, and it also created one of the best memes with the amazing Bagman when Johnny gave Peter a spare Fantastic Four suit, and Peter had to wear a bag on his head to hide his identity. But it also it also shows that Peter became addicted to this suit because it's able to give him an enhanced strength and give him an ability that he believes he needs. But later that day, he goes to Aunt May in the evening. She gives him some sagely advice as she was mad that he dropped out of New York University. But she gives him advice. Unbeknownst to Peter, he was stalked by Hobgoblin, and Hobgoblin basically blew up Aunt May's house, and and Peter tries to save her, but since the suit is weak to fire, it won't let him save her, and she dies in the fire. So he kills Hobgoblin, and this goes on a downward path as Peter begins to embrace this violence of the suit, and he believes that he is protecting people, but inside he is actually screaming that he shouldn't be doing this. And this will leads to the Kingpin hiring Scorpion and Shocker to try to capture Peter, but he kills both of them, and he goes to the Kingpin, and he basically maims him or beats him within an inch of his life. And this shows Peter trying, and throughout the entire story, Peter is just trying to is is trying to justify what he's doing is right, and this leads to a formation of a new Sinister Six, and in it is Craven the Hunter, Mysterio, Electro, and Rhino. And there are two new characters. The first one is J. Jonah Jameson with his Spider Slayer bot. Now, J. Jonah Jameson did this because he wrote, he decided it was justified now that Spider-Man is killing people, he should be he should be portrayed as a villain. But the suit made Peter believe that he made Peter attack J. Jonah Jameson, crushing his arm when he said that this was only for helping. He was trying to help people before, but now he's going to be the villain that J. Jonah Jameson wants him to be. The next is Brock Ock, and this is Eddie Brock with Dr. Octopus's appendages. Now, Eddie Brock still blames Peter for basically before when he framed an innocent man who was Sin Eater, but later Spider-Man showed the real Sin Eater, and an innocent man was released from prison. But Eddie still believes him for ruining his life, and takes him. It basically makes him want to do anything to get back at him. And originally, Eddie Brock would become Venom, but he kills Doctor Octopus and takes his arms. And this leads to a big fight outside the city, where Mysterio tries to use his his basically image warping reality set to basically confuse Spider-Man, but he ends up killing him first. Then Electro follows, followed by Rhino. He injures Eddie. And then they learn. Craven and Jonah learn his weakness is fire, and so they bring him to a barn which was burning down, and the suit leaves. But Jonah learns that it was Peter all along who was Spider-Man. So he safely gets him out of the barn, and before Craven can kill him, he knocks out Craven and takes Spider-Man to his house, where Felicia and MJ are waiting, hoping to find him because he's been missing for 2 weeks. J. Jonah Jameson returns to Peter's apartment, and he learns that the police learned that Spider-Man was Peter Parker because the Kingpin left an anonymous tip if he was killed, and so the police are trying to get Peter Parker. But Peter decides to lay low. He takes Mary Jane, and this is one of my favorite parts of the book. Mary Jane basically shows Peter that it wasn't his fault. The suit was basically controlling him, and he was basically at the mercy of the suit. And he basically fought to get back control. She tells him that what she admired about him was that he would go through the deepest, darkest parts of of human feelings, and he would always come out on top. And this is what I like. It shows that Mary Jane was more than just a damsel in distress, which a lot of comic book writers have taken her as. It's why a lot of them refuse to have Peter and Mary Jane back together again. Mary Jane was always a companion and a partner to Peter. She was his shoulder to cry on. She was the one who would give him advice, even if he couldn't see it. She was always there for him in more ways than one. And this dynamic works well. That's why I always compared them to Superman and Lois Lane, because not only are they even though that they're a couple, they are more than that. So Peter learns that the symbiote is back and it's controlling Reed Richards and it's taking over the Baxter building. And I'm not going to go on because I want to advise you guys to read this series, as this is an incredible series. The the ending and the fights that comes through it, it is just so incredible. So now I'm going to talk about the art of Spider Shadow. The art of Spider Shadow is very well done. I mean, Pasqual Ferry has a really good way of showing this type of action in a comic book, and it is very reminiscent to like the early and late 80s in the way it is. And I like the way how when Peter is more entranced with the suit, it gives him a more ragged, more decrepit look. He is unshaven, his hair is longer, he is completely under the suit's power. And when he tries to, he keeps, and I like the way the suit changes, and where he's like this proto Venom, and the way the way it, and the final fight in the Baxter building is really good. The only thing I did not like about the art is Matt Hollingsworth's color. Matt Hollingsworth is probably a great colorist. I don't know if he's been in any other ones, but all the dark overtones is very are very jarring to me. And one of the things I had a problem with was Mary Jane's hair. She's always known for her signature red hair, and Matt Hollingsworth gave her, like, since the dark overtones, he gave her like a black, almost black hair. And even though it does have like a few pieces of red showing, I wouldn't even know it was Mary Jane unless they said it. And that's one of the only complaints I have. Otherwise, the art is great. It is fantastic for this book, especially the one of when the Baxter building is taken over by the suit and it is being overrun with symbiotes. So yeah, I really dig this art, and it is a really good one. I mean, the fight between Spider-Man and the Thing, who was possessed by the suit, it really is awesome. The the whole way that the whole thing that action sequence is very good, is very awesome. And I recommend the art. I mean, but the only thing is the coloring. I can't vibe with all the dark overtones. So that's all I got to say about the art. The first story from Spider-Man Fairy Tales is done by C.B. Cebulski, which is called Off the Beaten Trail, and it is with art from Ricardo Tessera. Tercia. Uh, Probably butchered that name, but still, this is a retelling of the story of Little Red Riding Hood, with Mary Jane as Little Red Riding Hood, Venom as the Big Bad Wolf, Aunt May as the grandmother, and Peter Parker as the woodsman. And in the first part of the story, we see Betty Ross retelling the story of how she was saved by the mysterious spider, as she was attacked by Hansel and Gretel. No joke. And how the mysterious spider saved her, and was able to, and then J. Jonah Jameson, who was the village head, said that how we shouldn't put our faith in this spider because we do not know if he is a menace or if he is not. Then we see Mary Jane as she's contemplating the engagement she has with Peter, and she even talks to her cat Felicia, her black cat Felicia. Nice little Easter egg right there. And we learned that one of her friend was Gwen Stacy, and she had died from one of the wolf attacks. And given she was actually tasked to go see Aunt May, who was having a hard time, who was actually sick, and so she was going to give her a basket of goodies. And when she was there, she saw Peter, and J. Jonah Jameson was giving a hard time of basically that he wasn't strong enough, that he couldn't lift his own axe, but he said that he was agile, and he was always ready to protect people, even if it would cost him his life. And so he says goodbye to MJ, and then she goes on the trail, and then she encounters the big bad wolf, who is represented by Venom. And they have this really elaborate chase sequence where she even uses her basket to jump to grab a branch as she jumps over a cliff. And and after that, she makes it to Grandma's house, and we see the entire, my, what big eyes you have, what big teeth you have, and all that nonsense. But then Peter comes in through the chimney. She first thought it was the spider, but turns out it was Peter, and Peter is actually the spider. But he didn't have time to get his costume on, and he decided to fight the wolf by himself. But he could barely lift his axe, and even though he was agile, he decided to he still decided to fight the wolf. But Mary Jane came at the last minute to help him lift his axe, and together they basically brought it down on the wolf and basically KO'd him with the axe. And at the end, Aunt May told him to go get the other woodcutters, and so they did. And while they were leaving, Spider-Man picked up Mary Jane's hood, which now had two holes from when the wolf tried to slash her, and we see that it had this intricate web design, and we could see that this is going to be the Spider-Man mask. And so they they go off hand in hand to the village, and in the shadows of the woods we see other Spider-Man villains. We see like the Rhino, we see Carnage, we see vultures, and all fairy tale versions of them. And this is the type of thing that I like, the type of stories that I like, because with Spider-Man and Mary Jane, Mary Jane is not just a damsel in distress. She's Spider-Man's friend. She's his partner. She's his confidant, and it really sucked because this book came out in 2006, and during the Civil War, and not long after that, we knew that in foresight we knew that One More Day was coming. But going to the art, I do love the art. The art is very chibi, very very cartoonish in its way, and I think I think Ricardo did a great job with it, with his style of art. He made the characters seem like they were from the comic book, but not too much from the comic book. It was very reminiscent to like the old, I don't know if you guys remember, there was a Nickelodeon show which had fairy tales, which had draw fairy tale cartoons of fairy tales, and that kind of reminded me of this. So we'll go on to the next story right now. The third story of this anthology is called The Spirit of Friendship, and it has art by Nico Henrichian, and it is the story of the spider god of African folklore, Anansi, who is the Spider-Man of this world. And Anansi is unbelievably bored. He wants to go on an epic quest and have a new tale to tell. So he goes to the heavens where he wants to go to his father, but he is stopped by his uncle Nabatsi. And Nabatsi tells him of a special flower which will give him the powers to control people. And this is a quest that he cannot give up. So Nabatsi gives him a gourd filled with water, saying it will be thirsty on the way. And with it, he begins his quest. On his way down, he encounters the spirit of air, and air tries to have him forget this foolish quest, and he captures air in the gourd of water that his uncle gave him, and he told air that he would release it into the four winds. Air begged not to be released into the four winds, that he will travel with him. So he takes the spirit of air with him as a companion. The next challenge is the spirit of water. And when the water tries to drown him, Anansi uses his sarong to soap up all the water. And he told him that he will release him if he allows the villagers, which he was depriving of water, to be able to take all the water that they need, and all the water for the lands, and he will become his companion. Water agrees. And then they come across a steep cliff. Anansi tries to pull a vault over it with a bamboo branch, but the cliff turns out to be sand, the spirit of sand. And Anansi uses the bamboo as a straw, and he sucks in the sand, and he threatens to blow it across the land, so he would never reshape again. He told him that he wanted to see the land, that he would agree to go with him because he wants to see the land, if he did not destroy his body. So sand became a new companion for Anansi. Then Anansi was in the campfire, and he was telling them that he wanted to find this flower so he can have people listen to him and he wouldn't be lonely anymore. Then fire, the spirit, which says that he would destroy Anansi for taking control of his three brothers. Anansi doesn't lift a finger on him because he knew he will lose against fire. So he decides to finish his quest alone, telling them that they are free of their pact with him, and he will keep going on his own. So when he arrives at the valley which the flower blooms, he is attacked by the bee god, and the bee god is the enemy of the spider god. So when Anansi is up against the ropes, the four spirits that he befriended help him, and they tell him to, and they with all their powers to put together, they are able to defeat the bee god. And the bee god is out of the way. They tell Anansi to take the flower and finish his quest. And he says, I have finished my quest. I have found true power with the power of friendship. And this is the end of this story. And the stand-ins, if you haven't guessed, are the Fantastic Four. And the bee god is basically Doctor Doom. And Uncle Nabatsi is Uncle Ben. So this is a very good way to twist the lore and still keep it lore friendly, Marvel friendly. In any ways, like air is a representation to Invisible Woman. Water, Mr. Fantastic. Sand, the Thing. And fire, of course, is the Human Torch. So we have a very good way of seeing those Marvel-esque stories in a different culture. And this is why I like that. This is another good story. So we'll see if CB Cebulski continues this in the next story. The third story in this anthology is called Eclipse, and it has art by Kei Kobayashi and color by Christina Strain. Now, in this story, it takes place in feudal Japan, and here we have Izumi, who is a who lives in a monastery with his uncle Masarui and his aunt Satsuki. And these are basically the stand-ins for Spider-Man, Peter Parker, Aunt May, and Uncle Ben. Now, years ago, Izumi's father and mother were killed by yokai, and the yokai have been bothering the travelers during the night. And Izumi wanted to take his revenge on the yokai using his father's sword, but he cannot. But his Uncle Masaru, says that it is a foolish act to seek revenge. So, so he one night, Izumi decides to go into the forest alone, where he encounters a green mist yokai, which is kind of like the representation to the Green Goblin. But he also encounters a spider yokai, which represents Venom. And the Venom yokai says that he was the one that killed his family all those years ago, and he poisons Izumi get with his venom, and he told him since he left the gate open, there is nothing stopping him or the other yokais he has summoned to bring death upon the temple. And this and with Azumi out of the way, the yokais, which has a cat yokai, which is a representation for Black Cat, a Tengu, which is a representation for the vulture, and a wolf yokai, which is man wolf. They all attack the monastery. They kill Masaru, and they kidnap Satsuki. And the spider yokai tells her that the poison coursing through Izumi will corrupt him and turn him into a yokai as well. Instead, instead, so Izumi attacks the yokais. He defeats them all, but he is driven by revenge, and he remembers the mantra, like a mantra that his grandfather told him, and it was his dying words which he wrote in blood. As he is about to give in to his demonic side, he remembers the mantra, and that mantra was, when you feel trapped, look for the light on the path before you. And Izumi remembers who he is, and instead of killing the spider yokai, he decides to leave it crippled, and he saves Satsuki. And instead of his skin completely turning black as it was, it turns red with spider webbing. And this was the beginning of the Spider-Man of this universe, as he became known as the Red Boy, the Red Spider Boy. And this has to be my favorite one. The art in this is just incredible. It is just unbelievable. The watercolors and and the and the design of each of the yokais. And since I do like Japanese anime and feudal era and samurai stuff, this story was just right up my alley. So, hopefully the last one is good. Well, we'll see. Now the last story is What You Wish For, and it is a story kind of similar to in the vein of Cinderella, except with Cinderella, it's Peter. He was a boy who was a one part of the knights, or a son of a knight, and his father and uncle died in the war, and they had Norman take up take up take him and raise him. Unfortunately, they raised him as a servant, so he cannot. So he lost his land and everything, and he stays days serving the Osborns who have took him in. So yeah, we have Norman and Harry Osborn as the evil stepfather and the evil step brother. And one of the people who is in this as well as an ally for Peter is Mary Jane. Mary Jane helps Peter whenever she can, and she also helps him, and he also helps her when he can. She ends up joking, calling him her knight in shining armor. And this is kind of like a sweet friendship between the two. And the thing that sets this story off is that Peter learns of an invitation to Princess Gwendolyn's ball, which will cause him to what she's well, basically she's looking for a knight or a prince to become her husband, and he will inherit the throne. Norman and Harry are trying to do the same thing, but Peter learns of this, and he has a crush on Gwendolyn, and so he decides to make his own suit of armor. He thinks up of a way to come up with a version of this armor, and he sees a spider web between the tombs of his father and his uncle, and he decided to use that as his new coat of arms. So on the night of the ball, Harry and Norman were going to the ball, while Peter was told to clean out the stables. But Mary Jane came in and helped him out, told her that she will become his knight in shining armor this night. And Peter went to the ball in his new armor, and he announced himself as the Prince of Arachne. And yeah, this armor is very cool, very awesome, very cool. It's like what I would expect a medieval Spider-Man to wear. So they so Gwen falls in love with him at first sight. They dance the night away, but then he realizes that it's midnight and he needs to go back. And when she tries to leave, he loses his bracer, and the bracer, and they look, and you know the thing with Cinderella, the glass slipper. It's been announced that they're going to find her, that they need to find the missing slipper, or the one who fits the slipper. So they go around looking for the bracer, and Mary Jane finds it in Peter's room, and she realizes that he was the Prince of Arachnia, and Norman finds out as well. He threatens to kill Mary Jane, so Peter gives him the bracer, and Mary Jane says that she would that not to give up. If Gwen is who you love, then go there and be with her. And so he goes and beats Norman to the king, and he actually is convinced that he is the Prince of Arachnia, and Norman was trying to stick to just steal the throne from the king. Norman is furious. He tries to kill the king, and Peter comes to the king's defense, and throughout they have a big epic sword fight a chandelier falls down and it crushes Princess Gwendolyn. And Peter kills Norman out of revenge, and this causes the king to name Peter his successor to the throne, and he now has another suit of armor, which is uh very which is similar to the Black Spider-Man suit. And this and then at the end, Peter it says that Peter has a hole that nothing can fill his heart, but there was also another heart whose hole cannot be filled, and it shows Mary Jane crying, holding Peter's bracer, calling him her knight in shining armor. And this really is my least favorite of the stories. And it has to do with the bummer ending, knowing that one more day is just around the corner. And the thing is that Peter is very it, it that Peter and Mary Jane are destined to be apart forever in this world, and that and the art is kind of amateurish on this one. I mean, there's this one part where Peter is picking up Mary Jane and his arm is in the wrong place. So, yeah, this is the least one of my favorites. So, let's get to the ratings, people. Okay, so the first rating of the stories I reviewed today is the Spider Shadows by Chip Zdarsky. Yeah, I am going to give it a 4 thwaps out of 5. Now remember, 1 thwap being the worst, 5 thwaps being the best. So yeah, Spider-Man Spider Shadow is getting 4 thwaps out of 5. And the reason I'm giving it 4 thwaps is the coloring. The coloring is just so dark, so dreary, and like I said, the fact that I can't even tell it was Mary Jane because they completely did her hair almost black, only with red highlights, is kind of jarring. And this really did did like a number to me as I read it, because sometimes I almost forgot that that was Mary Jane. But still, the story is great. The payoff is fantastic, and it's just such a good read. Okay, and for Spider-Man Fairy Tales, the first book off the first story of this anthology, I am going to give it the first story of the anthology, Off the Beaten Path. I am going to give it 3 thwaps out of 5. It's not too good, but it's not too bad. But still, it has a lot of cute moments with Peter and Mary Jane of that world, and it shows a lot of initiative of how the character of Mary Jane is, and also Spider-Man, how Spider-Man depends on her, and she depends on him as well. And it's it's a cute story. The The Spirits of Friendship gets 3.5 thwaps out of 5. And that is because the art is great, but they just tried jamming too much into it as for such a small scale, for such a small book. And yet and it kind of gets to you with that. And with it, with all the story that they want to fit in one comic book, it just didn't seem right. So the third story, Eclipse, that gets 4.5 thwaps out of 5. And yeah, this is a great book. This is a great story. That was one of the best Spider-Man stories I've ever read. And if you can find it in single issue, just pick that one up, and that you won't be disappointed with that one. As as for the last one, What You Wish For, that is getting a 2 thwaps out of 5. It was the worst of the one of the four tales, and well, some of the character designs were really cool, really good. the The story was just very depressing. It's like Zeb Wells' run so far, and we don't need and we don't need dark, depressing Spider-Man stories. This He's not Batman, and so that comes to the end, and I hope you guys enjoyed my review for Spider-Man Spider Shadow and Spider-Man Fairy Tales. I hope you people liked what I had to say about it, and I hope it gives you what you expect for Spider-Man. And I'm sorry for this video being so late. I have been working and being lazy, and the heat has been getting to me. But I hope to see you guys next time on my channel. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And as I always say, keep playing, and God bless.